Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're regular here, you know I review many photographic, audio and video related products. And if you're new here, well, that's exactly what I do. Now today I'm comparing two cameras. I'm looking at two cameras. I'm looking at the Nikon Z30, which we have here. And I bought this fairly recently. It was released in 2022. And it was actually marketed by Nikon as a content creation camera. So I'm looking at the Nikon Z30 and the Canon R10, which we have here. And they're quite different in design, but they're both very capable cameras, both for photography and for video. Although, to be fair, both cameras are really quite heavily marketed towards the content creators, whether it be TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it might be. Now I've used both cameras for both stills and for both video, and I love both of them, to be honest. I'm using both in the studio here on a regular basis, and I haven't really got a preference over which one I prefer over the other. I tend to use the Canon R10 a lot in the studio because I've got 3 other Canon cameras, and I can match the colours between all 3 of them. That is the only reason, not because the image quality is better from the R10. It's easier to match the colour output, obviously from the same brand. If I was using all Nikons, I would use the Nikon Z30, obviously, because I would be able to match that easier with the other cameras. But what I want to do today is very briefly, hopefully very briefly, explain what I think are the major differences between the R10 and the Z30. And they're both very comparable, to be honest. The Z30, Nikon Z30, has a 21 megapixel sensor. And it's a lovely sensor. It's a well-known sensor. It's got the 21 megapixel sensor inside the Z30. That's the same sensor as the Nikon Z50 and the ZFC. So if you're familiar with the results from either of those cameras, you certainly won't be disappointed from the results in the Z30. So I can actually highly recommend that, because I've used the Z50 and I've used the ZFC. Well, I've owned the Z50 and the ZFC. So it's a very, very comparable, if not identical, results to those two particular cameras in low light, in good lighting, you know, wherever you're going to use it, certainly for stills. Video slightly different because the features of the Z30 outweigh really, or outstrip the features of the Z50 and to some extent the ZFC. So yeah, a great little stills camera the Z30 is, although it has no viewfinder. To me, that's the biggest difference between the Nikon Z30 and the Canon R10. The Canon R10 has a really nice viewfinder. A lot of photographers, if not most of us, do really enjoy using the viewfinder, particularly in, you know, difficult lighting conditions. So you might be out in the sunlight and you want to be able to clearly see what you're taking the photograph of. Having the viewfinder makes a big difference to that, where with the Z30 it has no viewfinder. Also, for viewing your images in bright sunlight, it's easier to view them in the viewfinder when it is on the back of a screen, because you're squinting. It's just not very pleasant. So you know, I would say if photography is your main goal, then it may well be worth looking at the Canon R10 or possibly the Nikon Z50, because that does have a viewfinder, and it's also, you know, comparable in price to the Canon R10. And that's another reason why I'm looking at these two cameras, because they are very comparable in price between the two of them. And that's why, you know, I'm looking at them. And I think Nikon pitched their camera against Canon, or vice versa. I'm not really sure. They both came out at much the same time. I will put a link in the description of this video to my Flickr site. That way you can take a look at images taken with the Nikon Z30 or the Z50, the Canon R10, and many other different cameras. So it's much easier to see them on Flickr than it is to see them on my YouTube channel. So as I said earlier, the Nikon Z30 has the 21 megapixel sensor. The Canon R10 has the 24 megapixel sensor, still an APS-C sensor, but it's 24 megapixels, so it's slightly more megapixels. But in reality, you're not really going to notice any difference. You really aren't. Maybe if you're blowing them up and making larger prints, or you're cropping a lot, you may well notice a difference, but I highly suspect that you won't. The other great thing with both cameras, you can adapt older lenses with these cameras, and I think that is a great option. With the Nikon Z30, you can buy the FTZ mount adapter. This is the Mark 1 version, which has got this horrible shoe at the bottom. It really is annoying. It's a tripod mount and you can't detach it, so it's really annoying when you're taking it on and off the camera. But you can mount the older lenses, such as this F-mount 18-105. I think it's the 18-105. Yeah, it is, the 18-105. It's actually a very, very nice lens. And these lenses are not expensive to buy. They're called DX mount lenses, which is the crop sensor lenses. And they work brilliantly on the Z30. The autofocus works great, the exposure control, it transmits the EXIF information. So don't be afraid of adapting older lenses to your Nikon Z30. Likewise with the Canon R10, it's an RF mount body, so it's the same mount as their full frame bodies, but you can adapt them using the Canon or third-party mount adapters. I've got this as the Canon mount adapter. That's an EF and EFS mount adapter to RF. Yeah, don't be afraid of mounting, don't be afraid of adapting, you know, older lenses to work with either of these cameras. It makes it a much more cost-effective way of getting into the mirrorless system. So you don't have to buy Z-mount lenses for the Z30. Likewise, you don't have to buy full-frame lenses for the R10. The other downside with both of them, Canon don't make a great deal, only make two actually at the moment, lenses designed for the crop sensor RF mount. So that's why it's also handy to be able to adapt older lenses. The same with Nikon. They only make 2 or 3, might be 4 lenses for their DX Z mount, or I'm not sure what we call it, but the crop sensor Z mount lenses for the crop sensor bodies. They don't make many of those lenses either. It's predominantly full frame lenses. Although with both, you can use your full frame lenses on both cameras, so you're not restricted from that point of view, and they work great. As an example, I've got the full frame 16mm lens fitted on my R10, and it works great. You just have to take into account that with Canon, that 1.6 times crop factor, so that becomes about a 25mm on here, and that's really nice, so no problem with that. Likewise, this is a full frame 28mm lens on my Z30, so that's about 42, I think, about 42mm on a full frame body, but they both work really, really great. So for photography, they're both going to produce great results, but the slight advantage, well, could be actually big advantage with Canon R10 is its viewfinder. Now the handling of them, I actually love the handling of the Z30. I also love the handling of the R10. The Z30 has got this lovely grip. It's a better grip for my hands than what the R10 is. I really like the grip on the Z30. It's a very, very compact body, and it's got plenty of function buttons. So you've got your ISO white balance function, you've got ISO and exposure compensation on the top there. I've actually set this command dial on the back here for exposure compensation. For me, that works better for me, so I can just turn that dial to adjust the exposure compensation. PASM dial on the top. Yeah, and it's got 2 function buttons on the front of a body, so plenty of control with a Z30, even though it is an incredibly compact camera. So for photography, it's got a lot of control with it, and you're not going to be disappointed with what you can get out the Z30, and you can get to all the different functions very, very easily. The other really nice thing with a Z30, it's got a separate switch on the back here for switching between photography and video. So that is fantastic. You can very quickly get from taking photographs to taking stills. It's not on the pattern dial, so that is fantastic. Also, your menus and your function buttons, well, your function buttons can be set up separately for video and photography. So one button can do two different functions depending on what mode you're in. So again, a very, very nice feature. So yeah, a great handling camera. Now the Canon R10 also handles really, really well. It's got a great grip, a really, really comfortable grip. I'm quite happy walking around all day with a Canon R10. No problem with that whatsoever. It's really, really comfortable grip. The shutter release is in a nice position, just on the top there. That is really good. It hasn't got so many function buttons as what the Nikon Z30 has, but what it has got is they're laid out, you know, quite nicely. So it's got the two on the back there, and it's got one on the front here. I've actually pre-assigned the one on the front to adjust very quickly, adjust the screen brightness. So that is great, because if I'm going out and about in sunny weather, I can just very quickly push that button and it brightens up the screen for viewing your photographs or composing your image or whatever. So yeah, handling fantastic. They both have the 3-inch articulating screen, which is wonderful. No difference there really between them. Same on the Nikon Z30. So, you know, a nice articulating screen on the Z30 as well, and they're good quality screens. They're both touch screen, so you've got no problems there either. You can touch the focus, adjust the menus, all the rest of it. So you can see there's a lot of similarities between the two cameras, but it's video really where there is some slight differences, and you may find the Z30 is going to be it could possibly be a better option depending on what type of video production that you do, I think. Now the Z30, Nikon incorporated a tally lamp. It's a very small little thing, but you know, it's really handy. First of all, as I said earlier, it's got the separate switch for switching between photographs and video. So if you are a hybrid photographer stroke videographer and you're very quickly taking images between photographs and video, the Z30 might be a better option because it's just that little bit quicker to get between the different functions. But the Z30, which is lovely, handles really well, but it's got a tally lamp on the front. So when you hit the record button, you can see the bright red tally lamp on the front. Now, here in the studio, that is fantastic because I can see from a distance that the camera is actually filming. You can't do that on the Canon R10. It's just got a tiny little record, a traditional record lamp on the actual monitor, as opposed to a really bright red tally light on the actual camera body, and that is great because you can see that from a distance. So that's one advantage with the Z30. Other than that, they're both very similar as far as video features. The Canon R10 is also a great video camera. It has no tally lamp, but it has no video record limit, which is the same as the Nikon Z30. So they're both great for content creation. And having no video record limit is great for me in the studio here, because I do fluff up, and it's great that I can just leave the cameras rolling and then cut out all those fluffs in the edit, rather than stopping and starting the cameras all the time, which is really annoying when you're running 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 cameras, and you have to go round, stop them all and start again. Much easier if you can just leave them running. I've also found neither of them overheat, so that is great. I know there was concerns with earlier Canon RF bodies that they overheat. I've not come across the R10 overheating or the Z30, so no video record limit on either of them. They both have power delivery via USB-C, so you can plug a USB-C lead into either of them, into a power block, and run them. The Canon though is a little bit more specific as to what type of power block it likes. So I would be really careful what power block you buy for the Canon R10. I will leave an Amazon affiliate link in the description to which power block I used and I found that has worked perfectly, so take a look at that. Or I've also found my MacBook Pro charger works great with a Canon R10. So once you find the right power block for the R10, it's great. It'll just keep on running until either your SD card fills up. You don't have to worry about your battery running out. If you're powering the cameras, either of them, from USB-C, do use the official either Nikon battery or the official Canon battery. It won't work with third-party batteries. The weight of the cameras is virtually the same between the two of them, so you're not going to have any issue there. The Nikon Z30 is 405 grams in weight, so that's body only, and the Canon R10 is 426 grams in weight, so pretty much the same. The Z30 is more compact, so it would fit in a smaller bag. The only reason it's more compact isn't so high, because obviously having no viewfinder. They both have hot shoe for putting on flash guns or whatever, and they both have a mic jack, which is on the side of the camera, so they're both the same there. Mic jack, USB-C, HDMI out, all on the side of each camera. No headphone jack in either of them, so if you want to check your sound quality, you either just check it using the needles on the back of a monitor, which isn't really the best thing to do. You really are best off monitoring them. What I do, I either plug in a little field monitor in either of the cameras to check the sound, plug the headphones into a field monitor, or use a wireless microphone. I'm using my Godox wireless microphones for this review, and that's got a headphone jack on the wireless microphone. That's not telling me what the sound is going onto the camera, but at least it's telling me that the microphone receiver is receiving sound. So it's just how it is. Manufacturers don't tend to put headphone jacks in their entry-level cameras, which is a bit of a shame. But at least they do put an external microphone jack in them. So yeah, there we go. That's pretty much the major differences between the Nikon Z30 and the Canon R10. I would say, and I think most reviewers are saying the same thing, if you're into the Nikon ecosystem, maybe you're into Nikon DSLRs and you want to get into the Nikon mirrorless system, the Z30 or the Z50 or the ZFC is a great entry, but the Z30 is better for video because of a no record limit and power delivery. So the Z30 scores there, whereby if you're in the Canon ecosystem, again Canon DSLRs, and you want to get into the mirrorless system, then the Canon R10 is a great entry into that. It is crop sensor, they're both crop sensor cameras, but it's a great entry into the Canon ecosystem. And again, same as the Nikon, no record limit, and you can power it via USB-C. So they're both great little cameras. So there we go. I hope you found that useful. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and don't forget to take a look at my Flickr page so you can have a look at the photographs on Flickr. That would be really great. And stay tuned for more videos relating to videos, photography, podcasting, so on and so forth. And remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that as well. That really does help me grow the channel. So thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.